Hey everybody, Ben here from the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to Dungeon Bowl Starting Rosters College of Fire. So we're looking at all the teams in Dungeon Bowl, all 8 of the colleges with the sweet mixed team nonsense that's going on inside them, and we're putting together some example rosters, some starting rosters if you want to play Dungeon Bowl. Friendly or league, you're going to be starting with 1 million, and with all these different players, we're putting together some of the most exciting and potentially some of the best places to start when planning out your college team for Dungeon Bowl. But before we delve into some example rosters, we should have a look and see what players are available to the Fire College. So the Fire College is all about rage and anger and being under mountains, so it kind of ties in these teams together. We've got ogres, we've got dwarves, and we've got Khorne basically. Renowned for the fiery temperament of its wizards, the Bright College traditionally chooses teams composed of tough, headstrong players who are more at home pounding the opposition into the floor than handling the ball. The mainstays of their teams are dwarves and ogres whose sturdy physicality makes them ideal candidates for such a play style. So it's an interesting mix of teams. We'll start with the linemen. You can take 0 to 16 Dwarf Blocker linemen, Nobbler lineman, and Khorne Marauder lineman. Now, to be fair, you could make a really fun team using just linemen for this roster. We don't have one of those for you because the positionals are so good, but you've got the dwarf blockers there. Block, tackle, thick skull, armor 99. Like, alright, they're movement 4 and edge 4+, but they are going to be able to hold those corridors, which is a very dwarven thing to do. In fact, a dwarf blocker heavy roster should call itself Shield Wall because that's what you're going to be doing. And I love this. So Nobblars go so well. Nobblars and Snotlings. That titchy, that dodge, that stunty combination means that they're just 2+ anywhere they want to go with a reroll. So the Nobblars are going to be so important to the College of Fire. You've got great combat pieces in the dwarves, but they're slow. You've got excellent agility in those Nobblars, and they're only 15k as well. 4 Nobblars or 1 dwarf blocker, your choice. And the other cool element here for the lineman point of view is Khorne Marauders. So these guys are fragile, they're strength 3, they have no combat skills, and they've got no armor. They're armor 8+, but they have frenzy. So as your team develops, Dwarf Blocker takes guard, Khorne Marauder becomes his best friend, and you just get this psychotic pair of block, guard, and 4 frenzy dice being thrown. As soon as this dude gets block as well, it's a beautiful combination. And the Khorne Marauders being able to have mutation access going to be really important as your team develops. And then you've got more good stuff. 0 to 2 Dwarf Runners, 0 to 2 Dwarf Blitzers. So these are going to be the mainstay of your team. The Marauders are useful at movement 6 with edge 3+, but the Dwarf Runners at movement 6, edge 3+ with sure hands is going to be really helpful too. The Dwarf Blitzers there, movement 5 is not brilliant, but edge 3+ is going to give you another great ball handling threat, and the fact they come with block is going to make them very resilient as well. And in fact very consistent. Then you've got some fun stuff. So these guys can take 0 to 2 Troll Slayers. I love Slayers, they're tough and they are frenzied. So movement 5, block, frenzy, dauntless. Troll Slayers in a dungeon, that's where they belong. Dungeon Bowl is going to be full of teams in this meta with strength 4 and strength 5 pieces. Big guys and blockers are going to be everywhere because big guys and blockers do a great job of holding corridors. Troll Slayers, Dauntless, Frenzy, going to be brilliant at taking those out and at least moving them around. Then you've got some big guys. You can take up to 3 ogres. Blockers, punters, whatever you like. Obviously 1 punter, 2 blockers is a really good mix if you can afford all 3. But you've got a brilliant top end here, okay? You've got dwarves, they're slow. You've got Nobblars, they're little. You've got some frenzy dudes. You've got some decent mid-range guys. And then you've got the big daddies, 3 ogres max. So let's begin our dungeon exploration with the College of Fire. So you've got the Dungeon Bowl box, you've got a sprue of dwarves, and you've got a sprue of ogres. This is the starter set roster. So this is the beginning place for the College of Fire teams if you're coming in via the Dungeon Bowl box. 3 Dwarf Blocker linemen, 6 Nobbler linemen, 1 Dwarf Runner, 1 Dwarf Blitzer, 1 Troll Slayer, 1 Ogre Blocker, 1 Runt Punter, and 3 rerolls. So this is basically everything in the box here. Okay, this comes in at $9.95. You've got 3 rerolls as well, so you're going to be nice and consistent. This is a great team. This is a really cool place to start. You get a mix of absolutely everything. Those 3 dwarf blockers, solid in combat, as is the blitzer, as is the troll slayer. And then you've got the runner who's he's not terrible at maneuvering the ball. The downside of this roster is the Noblars are very fragile, but you've got 6 of them. So Noblars, Dwarf Runner, Dwarf Blitzers, Edge 3+, they're going to be able to handle the ball pretty reasonably. Everybody else is Edge 4+ here, which can be a little bit of a vulnerability, and it will mean that you can't move around as much as you need to. But the deal with the Fire College is that they want to punch things, and they want to punch things a lot. So an Ogre Blocker and a Runt Punter backing them up, you know, your first drop is going to be 6 players, and I don't necessarily know which 6 I'd want to take. I love the Ogres for holding corridors. I love the Troll Slayer, the Blitzer, the Runner combo as well, and probably 1 Noblar to just run around, and then I'd start bringing in the other Noblars via Teleporter, because you're going to be able to try and explore the entire dungeon, and a Noblar is a magical thing when you're trying to dodge through weird little places. So as far as a starting roster comes, what comes in the box for the College of Fire gives you everything. You've got 2 Blitzers there with the Dwarf Blitzer and the Troll Slayer. You've got 2 big guys with the Blocker and the Punter. You've got bunch of little dudes that are very disposable but also incredibly useful to opening chests and sidestepping around a dungeon. And you've got 3 dwarf blockers to just absolutely support any combat situation. This is a great place to start for the College of Fire. But as we look at these college teams, we kind of are going to be making sure that we start from a point of, if you have a X team, this is how you get into this college. So College of Fire has got a pretty decent dwarf sub-theme here. So this is going to be the Dwarf Heavy roster. So you take your dwarf team, what do you need to add to it to kind of be in a good place for Dungeon Ball? So the Dwarf Heavy roster here comes in at $9.95. 4 Dwarf Blocker linemen, 2 runners, 2 blitzers, 2 slayers, 2 rerolls. That's 10 players with 3 rerolls, sorry. And then you add 3 Noblars. So the clever thing here is you are supplementing your dwarf roster by reducing one of your blockers, saving a little cash to buy your 3rd reroll, and on top of that you just get access to 3 very useful stunty players. Now this is going to be a slow team, but if you are used to playing dwarves, that will not be that difficult for you to manage. And as your league develops, actually after your first game, you can just buy a few more Goblin linemen, Noblar linemen if you want to, and then save up for an Ogre, or 2 Ogres, or 3 Ogres, because by that point you've maxed out everything. One of the most challenging things about running a dwarf team in a league is you kind of run out of stuff to buy. But for all intents and purposes, the College of Fire gives you as a dwarf an opportunity to save up and buy Ogres. And that means you get to use your Death Roller miniatures in the actual game. The Death Roller doesn't exist in Dungeon Bowl, but you can take that model and use it as an Ogre. So the Dwarf Heavy roster here starts out, you're supplementing it with 3 Noblars, so you just need to find 3 models. And this is the cool thing, you can find tiny dwarves. You know, you can find little robots to do it. I think that's a great way of doing it. Little armor suits or something. You can really theme it dwarf style, and then when you get your Ogre, you can add to it, use a Death Roller, and you're absolutely smashing face. So we've looked at the dwarf angle, let's look at the ogre angle here. We've gone max ogre build, so what can you get if you're going in and getting all of those ogres? So this roster comes in at bang on $1 million, and you end up with 12 players total. We've got 5 Noblars, 2 Dwarf Blitzers, 2 Dwarf Troll Slayers, 2 Ogre Blockers, and a Runt Punter here with 3 rerolls. So this is a weird roster. You're taking the dwarf positionals and buddying them up with an ogre roster here. 3 ogres and a bunch of Noblars is not a bad place to start. Now there's one quick switch you can do here. Because we've gone for 2 Troll Slayers, you can sub 1 or 2 out for dwarf runners instead if you want that sure hands element. I think if you're running ogres, you've got those Noblars to run around, and what you can do there is just use those Troll Slayers as well. 2 Blitzers going to be able to handle the ball, but it's just actually if you want a bit more agility, you can flex that down and take runners instead. This is the point at which we go, ooh, Dungeon Ball's really interesting. We've got a template here, and you can start flexing already. So the first thing you can flex out is the mixture between the Troll Slayers and the runners. Maybe you take one of each. Maybe you take both runners because you think you want more ball handling skill. Maybe you drop one of those additional players and absolutely fill your boots with Noblar linemen. You know, you can drop a Troll Slayer who's what, 95k, and take a couple of Noblars and a Dwarf Blocker probably. Like, you can start building out and you can start flexing around. And then you could even bring in a Khorne dude. You could drop a Troll Slayer at 95k, take a Khorne player, take 3 more Noblars. That's 15 players on your roster. You've got a bit more agility, although a bit more frenzy, and you've got to max out your players. This is kind of start here and flex out up and down. And the Max Ogre build gives you 3 big guys, 2 frenzied dwarves, 2 dwarf blitzers, and a bunch of little dudes to get in the way. Magic. Now this is where we can start getting a little bit more aggressive. So the mixed frenzy build basically makes the most of the College of Fire's fiery temperament. This one comes in at 995. We've got 12 players again and 3 rerolls, so we're staying in that world of stability. 3 Khorne Marauder linemen, 2 Noblar linemen. So there's your mixture of players immediately. You've still got 2 of those titchy dodge dudes. They might be touchy, it depends on how their day is going. If they are a fiery temperament, they are probably going to be touchy all the time. But they're also titchy all the time, which means they're dodging 2++ everywhere all the time. 3 Khorne Marauder linemen with some solid movement at 6, Edge at 3+, and Frenzy as well is going to be quite entertaining. 2 Dwarf Runners for consistency. 2 Dwarf Blitzers, because any roster here that doesn't take those Dwarf Blitzers is going to have to consider what they're doing. They are potentially the core of this team. Movement's not great, Edge is good with that block element. Dwarf Runners and Dwarf Blitzers are probably the core of this team, but the Blitzers are probably the most ubiquitous. However, if you're me, it's the Troll Slayers you can't give up. So 2 Troll Slayers as well, and an Ogre Blocker with 3 rerolls. So we've got Dwarf Troll Slayer, Marauder, Marauder, Marauder. That's 5 frenzy pieces with 3 rerolls, 2 Sure Hands, 2 Movement 5 block, 2 little dudes to run around, and an Ogre as well. So you've got a nice top end there where you've got a decent amount of frenzy, decent amount of bash, and Ogre as well, and you've got 3 Movement 6 pieces with Edge 3+, and 2 Noblars to run around and dance as well. Again, you can flex up and down. You can drop a runner for an extra Marauder lineman and a Noblar. You can drop a Marauder lineman for 3 Noblars. This is where you can start maximizing your player count. Now the way it works is you drop 6 players at the beginning of the game, and then with the exception of the very first player's first turn, every turn you can bring a dude on via a teleporter. So you want to plan out your first contingent. Your dungeon vanguard is there to move out. Half of them are going to protect the entryways to your end zone. The rest are going to go exploring. This team, not a huge amount of movement, and leaving those Marauders on their own is going to be a bit risky, but you're likely to go 1 Marauder down a corridor and maraud into something else, and Strength 3 is pretty standard. Frenzy is very useful. If you can find a way to support them, Marauder going 1-on-1 in a corridor and getting a 2-knife Frenzy block is going to be huge for you. But that is not what we are here for. So the Max Violence roster, again at 3 rerolls. This team is cheap enough for you to be consistent, and with this amount of frenzy you're going to need it. Max Violence, 1 million exactly. You've got nothing to play with here. How many players are we looking at? Oh, 15. This is wicked. Right, 6 Marauder linemen. 6 Marauder linemen. You know that Khorne team you've just picked up and started painting? Get your College of Fire logos on them. Backed up with 5 Noblars as well. Okay, that's 11 players already. That's a great mixture of movement, agility, frenzy, and titchy. And then you add more stuff, okay? So 2 Troll Slayers, a Blocker, and a Runt Punter. So 2 Strength 5 dudes, 2 Block Frenzy dudes. This roster has got 8 Frenzy players and 2 Ogres on it. You line that up on 11's pitch and you are going to upset your opponent. I love this. And you've got 3 rerolls. If you want to be super risky, you can bin off a couple of rerolls and change up your player types. You've got 15 players. You can do whatever you want. You can flex out. In fact, at this cost, you could drop 3 of those Marauder linemen and take your other Ogre and just really pound the dirt. And that's the cool thing about all these rosters, is their starting points. You can flex out, you can drop players, and you can bring on different ones. But this one here with 8 frenzy players and 2 big guys with a ton of little dudes and 3 rerolls, you are basically covered from every angle of what you want to do in a dungeon. Frenzy, Mighty Blow, Titchy, it's all good. And the last roster we've got for you is a balanced reroll mix. So 3 reroll mix again comes in bang on 1 million. Now, we've got a bit of everything here, and I think this is probably a safe place to start. So you've got your original box from Dungeon Bowl, you've got a dwarf team. This is kind of the best angle to take, I think. 3 dwarf blockers, 2 Noblar linemen. Dwarf blockers are solid, linemen, those Noblars are going to run around. 2 dwarf runners and 2 dwarf blitzers to be a really solid contingent of players there. That's Edge 3+, that's decent armor, decent-ish movement or block. they are great players. And then 2 ogre blockers and 3 rerolls still. So this is a really solid mid-range kind of roster. If you've got a dwarf team, you pick up a box, you pick up a sprue of ogres, you're good to go. If you've got an ogre team, you pick up some dwarves, you pick up 1 box of dwarves and you're ready there. And with 3 rerolls, you're going to be consistent enough to be able to take some dodgy dodges, some risky 1-die blocks, or just be able to reroll a couple of dodged boneheads. Now, you've got a bit of flex in there, absolutely. You can drop a dwarf blocker lineman and fill your boots with noblars, no problem at all. Like I said, the great thing about this is there's so much flexibility with your costings, but I like this as a good place to start. And quite frankly, if you've got the starter set, the first roster's great. This one here, potentially a little bit better because you're maximizing on those skilled positionals. But the College of Fire is going to be sneaky top, I think. I mean, you've got everything you could want, and as your team develops, you're just going to add the missing elements too. It's cheap enough for 3 rerolls and a lot of fun. I really like this one. Anyway, like I said, these rosters are a starting point, so please let me know in the comments if you've got other brews, other builds you think are going to be really, really fun, because I think there's so much potential in the College of Fire, and there's such a good narrative as your team's going to develop. I am convincing myself with each one of these videos that a Dungeon Bowl League is where I want to be. Anyway, I'm going to disappear now, guys. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy Dungeoneering. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to help support the channel even further, please like and subscribe, or come join us on our Patreon. We have early access to content, we get loads of feedback from you guys, and we try and do competitions as much as we can. Or you can get yourself some Bonehead podcast merch on our Spreadshirt site. So if you want to support a team, especially for the Bonehead Championship, you can pick up a shirt, a mug, things like that. It all helps support the channel, and we really appreciate it. Anyway, links below. Thank you very much. Happy blocking.